Welcome to Bumps, Babies and Beyond. In this episode, we'll be discussing everything to do with breastfeeding. The heated debate about breastfeeding in public.
And then this woman said, you should be ashamed doing that in public.
The pros and the cons.
It's about my daughter. She has a need to breastfeed.
To have a baby on them, chomping away, I just couldn't get my head around it.
The dreaded mastitis.
Look in the mirror and I'd say my boobs look deformed.
And having a look at a breastfeeding masterclass.
And just see if you can guide him on. Perfect. So it should go in looking like a cherry, come out looking like a cherry.
Full of tips on how to breastfeed correctly. It's now illegal to deny mothers the right to breastfeed in public in the UK. I caught up with some mothers to find out about their experiences.
Other people have more of an issue about it than the mum doing it because we're usually quite discreet.
I didn't do very much breastfeeding in public, but when I did do a little of it, it was all right.
It didn't bother me to do it in public, and there's lots of mums doing it around you most of the time, so it feels quite supportive.
A man actually tried to stop me breastfeeding, but it was breastfeeding Ava, so that would have been, nearly 4 years ago. Did you ever have an experience like that?
I was a bit shy at first of breastfeeding, and then I went to my local nursery group, and it was cold. He was only a few months old, and I sort of said to them, do mothers breastfeed in these groups? And they said, yes, of course. And I had 3 tops on, because it was cold, obviously, and I didn't have a nursing bra, I didn't have a nursing top on, so I had to lift all 3 tops up in front of everybody and breastfeed him.
But mamas don't bat an eyelid. But
no, they don't.
It's since the law's come in that it's been working for you. But yours are older.
Yeah, when I first went home to my parents and breastfed, because my mum didn't breastfeed me, she actually said to me when I went to the house, would you like to go upstairs or would you like us to go into another room while you feed?
Your mum said that?
My mum. But I was adamant that I wouldn't breastfeed my children, just because, not adamant, but, oh, my mum didn't do it. It's not normal, you know, my parents didn't strip off in public in front of us, we didn't strip off in front of them, so...
It's not very liberal household.
No, not very liberal house, so I didn't ever think it'd be the most natural thing ever.
Yes,
but it was.
I understand that.
It was, and I was in tears because it was the most natural thing to do.
Now, you've had your babies before this law came in. Did you have anybody say anything cheeky to you when you were trying to breastfeed out in public?
With James, I went to Chester Zoo when he was 4 days old to take Laura to see the animals, and there was a group of people come past, and the men went past and noted what I was doing and walked on, and I was fumbling because I was, you know, new baby, 4 days old, and the women came past, and then this woman said, you should be ashamed doing that in public. And I said, oh, well, you've come to see the animals in the zoo feeding their young, but you're offended by me feeding mine. You really should be ashamed, not me. And her husband clapped. And he said,
her husband did?
It's about time someone shut her up, love. So, you know, it is becoming more accepted. The Department of Health did a poll recently and it showed that 84% of the UK public would be happy to see breastfeeding in public, providing it was done discreetly.
I mean, all this talk of discretion, though, they're only boobs. Like, that's only my elbow, and this has just got more glands and fat, but it's just another part of a body. It's... when we break it down, we've made them so sexualised that if you actually think of, you know, genuinely what they're used for, well, I don't understand why it offends so much. When I was sitting in a coffee house, somebody came up to me, it was a guy, and he said, when I was feeding Ava, shouldn't you go and do that in the toilet? So I said I would do if he went and ate his sandwiches in there too. You know, nobody wants to sit there and eat in the loo, and I had no wish to do so. But if you're not such a confident feeder, that could upset and throw you back, you know, 10 paces.
You don't go out very much, do you? It's worrying if you feel ashamed to do it.
It is.
Because actually, it's another one of your choices in life that you've chosen to do for your children.
A bit of me argues that if we carry on being as discreet as we are, we will never change the culture in the UK to normalise breastfeeding.
Yeah, of course. Listen, we've got these big old boobs to show them off.
You can be like me and have 3 tops and lift them on it.
If you're going to do it,
discretion there.
Don't hold back.
I mean, recently in Oldham, in the council building, the Civic Centre, a mother was asked to leave because she asked could she feed her 5-month-old baby, and this is when the law is out. Wow. And there's been an uproar, so I'm not sure we're still there yet, even with the law.
It's such an emotional subject, even with the law behind us. Another highly charged subject that everyone seems to have an opinion on is whether you should feed your newborn on breast milk or formula. I caught up with 2 mums who had 2 very different opinions. How did you choose? How did you decide?
I was brought up in quite a big family. All of us were bottle fed right from the very beginning. So when I found out I was pregnant, it was always my intention to bottle feed straight away. I've got 3 and I've bottle fed all of them. With my 3rd, I contemplated breastfeeding just because I had a friend who made it look so easy, but because I'd done it twice previously, so I just thought I'd carry on.
Now, I'm going to come and talk about the breastfeeding side of things. Now, for you, did you feel that there was an option or it was just going to be breast all the way?
I've got 2 babies. I've got a 4-year-old and an 11-month-old.
And you're breastfeeding the 11-month-old?
And the 4-year-old.
And the 4-year-old?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Has there never come a point with your 4-year-old, though, where you've kind of just said, enough's enough? Because having a baby latched onto me for 4 years just fills me with dread.
Yeah, I can. You feel that it would be possibly painful or just a bit
it's just a
queasy.
Long time, and the child's at school and they've got perfectly healthy diet of their own. They're on solid food, and I personally don't necessarily see the need for it.
Well, it's there's no real need for us to drink tea or coffee, is there?
No.
But we all like a cup of tea and a biscuit from time to time, don't we? Maybe a cuddle with mummy. So that's, I think, how she sees it.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to be there for her. So it's that little time where I reconnect with her, and then she's like, OK, well, now I'm going to go off and build a castle. OK,
so it's really actually, by the sounds of it, more for the comfort.
She wants it for the comfort, and in my mind, I think this is nutritionally benefiting her still, and it's still healthy.
In your expert opinion, do you think there's a difference between bottle-fed babies and breastfed babies?
It's quite clear that in the short term, babies who are breastfed are 5 times less likely to get gastroenteritis, urine infection, chest and ear infection, allergies, because breast milk is protective, and there are benefits for the mum.
After hearing the benefits and the natural immunisation that you get from breastfeeding, I mean, what's your reply to that?
All 3 of my kids were bottle fed, and I stand by the fact that that was best for me, but I don't know whether or not I'm lucky, but all 3 of my kids are absolutely fine. They very rarely get coughs or colds or viruses or infections, and they've got no allergies, so I'm not panicking. They seem quite perfectly healthy to me, and they're not particularly fussy eaters, so I don't even think that's had a problem.
OK, so I'm going to challenge you. You've named the benefits of breastfeeding. What are the benefits of bottle feeding?
Formula milk is nutritionally complete. It has a place for ladies who can't breastfeed because maybe they've got challenges. So, for example, some ladies who may have a medical condition that might challenge their ability to breastfeed, then we need formula. We need formula for those cases, or where babies aren't thriving because they've got metabolic conditions. I think it's my job as a professional to support women to do things the best way they can do them.
Would you ever have considered formula feeding your baby?
I feel that I've made a fully informed choice, and so I do know that there are great health benefits to breastfeeding. So knowing what I know, the answer would be no.
Have you ever felt, I suppose, inquisitive, just to see what it feels like?
I was always very interested as to how it would feel, as to whether or not I'd have a different bond with my baby. But I kind of felt like I wanted to keep my boobies for myself and for my partner and just stick with the bottle. So to have a baby on them, chomping away, I just couldn't get my head around it.
It's really interesting to hear your point of view, because what I have found, and in the experience of my friends, that breastfeeding has not put a halt to my intimate, loving relationship.
What about your partner? How did he feel? Did he ever say, oh, why don't you give it a go? Or actually, no, I think I agree, they're for me?
He was a bit worried about me breastfeeding, because not necessarily because he wanted my boobs for him, but because of his bond with the baby. He wanted to have an input to feed the baby, and like during the night feeds, he would always do the night feeds.
Why do women feel this pressure, though?
I'm not sure the pressure's always from the professionals, though. Sometimes I think we have our own internal pressures that we feel under pressure to do something a certain way. And so, for example, if you're choosing to bottle feed, my job would be to make sure you can do that safely. And the same with breastfeeding.
Do you believe that there's a different bond from a bottle-fed baby to its mother as opposed to a breastfed baby?
Depends how the baby is handled. I think it's a close proximity of breastfeeding that creates a stronger bond, because when your baby's very close to you and you're breastfeeding, you release a hormone called oxytocin, and oxytocin is known as the hormone of love. Now, mums who bottle feed can bond as well. You know, we're not saying that. They can keep their baby in close proximity when they're feeding. But if you watch some mums who bottle feed, they turn the baby away and they watch the telly while they're feeding them and they don't talk to them. So, again, it comes back to my role as a professional. If a mum chooses to bottle feed, I will be talking to her about why it's important for her to have skin contact, why it's important for her to have a baby close when she's feeding, to be looking at a baby, to be talking to a baby, touching a baby, because all of that, particularly in the first 2 years of life, develops the emotional part of the baby's brain.
So you don't lose the bond if you bottle feed?
Not at all. I'm not sure it's quite as powerful immediately.
OK. Come on, Mama.
I had a really, really strong bond with all 3 of my kids.
I knew you were going to say
From
that.
the very beginning.
You're the mama? How
Yep.
could you not?
The minute I gave birth to all 3 of my babies, they were put straight on me, skin to skin, and I held them for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Trigger, skin to skin, the trigger.
How do you feel hearing that there might be a different bond between you and your children because you bottle fed?
At the end of the day, it's your own decision, isn't it? If you choose to breastfeed, you breastfeed. If you choose to bottle feed, then you bottle feed. I don't think anyone has the right to judge anybody on anything.
No.
Especially when it comes to feeding your own baby. It's your child at the end of the day.
1 in 10 breastfeeding mums will suffer from mastitis. I caught up with a couple of them to find out how they coped.
Mastitis is it's when your milk ducts get blocked and the pressure that's on your breast, it feels like someone is stabbing you.
My breasts were throbbing, they were red raw, I had lumps in my breasts and I found it very hard to try and put my arms down where my breasts were so swollen.
I think the pain of mastitis is worse than childbirth.
For me, I looked like I had a really bad boob job. I had one boob was up here and really lumpy, but soft on this side, and this boob was under my armpit. I got mastitis in both breasts.
Oh my God. I would look in the mirror and I'd say, my boobs look deformed. Same situation as you. One up, one down. Just ridiculous.
So I think if ladies knew that if you get engorgement to start off with where the breast is over full, you need to wake your baby up and feed your baby at that point, because mastitis is an inflammatory condition. It's where the breast milk is being pushed back into the ductal system and then out into the connective tissue in the breast.
The first time I had it, I was literally sitting like this while he was feeding, and I was just,
biting on a muslin. I remember biting on a muslin, crying.
Really, if women knew that if you've got this backlog of milk in your breast, usually the signs of that is part of the breast may look flushed, it may be tender to touch, and your breast may feel uncomfortable. And at that point, if you can get the baby on with its chin to that area, get someone to support you so you position your baby better. Even if your positioning's already good, you can optimise it a bit more so you get a better transfer of milk. Rest up, because mastitis is linked to fatigue. Make sure you've nothing on your breast that's constricting it, like underwire bras or a seam in your bra that goes across that area, or you're not carrying a bag across that area. And feed your baby frequently so that you're keeping that breast soft. Use it as a first breast. Then often it doesn't progress to get to the state you ladies got into.
I tried all this, and I had the baby in the bed with me, and I read everything that said feed, 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 and I kept on trying to feed, and it felt like it was getting worse, and the more that the little one cried, the worse it got. I mean, what's your advice to a woman when she's got to that point? Is there anything left that can be done?
You need, again, I can't stress the importance enough of keeping your breast soft. So if you can't bear to put your baby on, maybe using a breast pump or hand expressing to keep the breast soft, because they recover more quickly. Yeah. If you're managing it conservatively and it's not getting better after 12 hours, you should go at that point and get antibiotics. If before that you start to get the symptoms I've just talked about, you should go for antibiotics earlier. And you need to make sure your course of antibiotics is appropriate.
What people will never understand is the pain, because I stopped breastfeeding, which was, to me, it was so horrible because the choice was taken away from me. Yeah. Do you miss the breastfeeding? How did you feel when you had to stop?
It was bittersweet to begin with. Obviously, I missed that closeness and the bond, whatever.
Because it's your time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Breastfeeding. But it's it's the most. I mean, I never thought I would say, but how lovely it was and is, and it is the most lovely thing, to have with your baby.
It got really bad to the stage. I mean, I was crying every day, and every time he was due to feed, obviously you'd switch breasts, and every time I knew it was that breast he was going to, I would cringe, I would hate it, I would dread it. It was ridiculous. And then I had to make the decision to go on 2 bottles.
For most mums, breastfeeding your baby can be a wonderful experience. However, if you do run into any problems, please get checked out immediately. Many first-time mums do find breastfeeding a little bit of a struggle, and there is a knack to it. So we caught up with lactation consultant Sarah Bridges to find out what her top tips are.
I run a Association of Breastfeeding Mothers breastfeeding group. It's held in my dining room. If you've got a mum who's been through a particular breastfeeding issue, she might sit there and somebody new might come to the group. She can make friends with that lady and also offer mum-to-mum support. And the counsellors are there really just to make sure that the women are giving each other accurate advice. Some of the issues that we've had have mainly been to do with positioning and attachment and trying to make sure that the baby is latching on in the right way. If the baby isn't latched on in the right place, it can mean that the breastfeeding becomes really painful for mum.
I had very, very sore nipples and they were cracked and bleeding. And since Sarah sorted out Chloe's tongue tie, that's all stopped and made such a difference.
What was happening with Sarah is that Chloe was nipple feeding, which kind of meant that when Chloe was going on, it's almost like centering the nipple right in the middle. And the baby sort of goes on like this, you know, works really hard, thinks, oh, this is a bit hard work, actually, I'm going to add in some suction, and then suddenly turns into a Dyson and just goes like this. When the baby comes off, because actually the baby's working really, really very hard to have some milk, and it's a little bit like having a McDonald's milkshake with a really tiny straw. So you sort of go, and then you might even lose suction and go, you know, so baby might make clicking noises as well on the breast, you know, so feed, losing this suction. And then what happens is, you know, the baby comes off absolutely shattered. Mum goes, great, I'm going to put the baby down. 5 minutes later, baby's waking up because it's had a cat nap and it's not had exactly enough milk, and then wakes up again just going, wow, you know, it's absolutely starving. So the way that you do it is actually by changing the angle and the way that baby goes onto the breast. If that's the nipple and that's the bottom lip and everything here, and this is the baby's chin, you want to lead on with the chin here, because when the baby opens its mouth, it goes like this and goes, and the nipple goes right to the back. Whereas if you just letterbox it, the tongue pulls the nipple, pushes it up into the hard palate, the baby's hard palate, which is very sore and painful for mum, and then the baby adds in the suction as well, which then leads to the nipple being pulled and pushed and rubbed and pulled and pushed and rubbed, and then that's when it comes out looking like a brand new lipstick instead of a cherry. So it should go in looking like a cherry, come out looking like a cherry. Are you comfortable having him up so square on you? Because he can actually come at you a little bit lower, you know, he can even have his bottom sitting on you if you like, because it doesn't really matter which position the baby's coming at, as long as his chin goes on first. Okay. Because if I just do this as well, you know, your nipple is 360 degrees circular, so you've got 360 potential positions, yeah? And it doesn't really matter where the baby is lying across you, as long as the chin hits first and the baby goes up and over. So let's make sure he's turned right into you, so that he's not having to stretch. Okay, so if you hold him with this hand, just bring him up a bit more. No, that's Mum's jumper. You can't have that. And just see if you can guide him on. I can't come home with you. Hang on. That's it. Just bring it. Perfect. See?
Because I've got twins this time round, I found breastfeeding very different, and I've found that to tandem feed them, the best position is the rugby hold. And because he's got quite a little mouth, because his latch isn't great, I still am going to do that and try and get his chin out. There we go. That's good, and I know it's good because I've got sore nipples at the moment and it's not hurting. He does good Pringle lips.
Yeah. Basically, Pringle lips is like lips that are flanged. So you know, if you've ever put two Pringles in your mouth at the same time, you've got one going one way, one going the other. She's like, you know, that sort of thing. Basically, when the baby goes on, the baby then is feeding lips flanged around the breast so that it's got a good seal and good attachment. Breastfeeding is something you have to do many times a day, and if you're sitting and in a position that is making you tense and you're having to lift the baby up and be really, really uncomfortable, it's not sustainable. So you need to make sure that you can put your feet up, so use a stool, lean back, let gravity hold the baby on, because actually if you're leaning back in a position, the baby's latched on, the baby's nice and secure because gravity's holding the baby on, actually you can pick up your sandwich and you can eat a sandwich. So essentially just make sure the baby is completely tummy to you, making sure that baby is latched on correctly, chin to skin, baby reaches up and over the nipple, and thirdly, make sure you're really comfortable.
Just because breastfeeding is natural doesn't mean it comes naturally. It can be hard, especially in those first few weeks, for both of you to adapt to something so new. Many women would argue that if you can just manage those first few weeks, it does get easier. Whatever you choose, best of luck, and do enjoy that bonding experience. Well, sadly, that's all from this episode of Bumps, Babies and Beyond. Hope that you found these films helpful and informative. We'll see you next time.